Hello again. And firstly, my apologies. I think I introduced our guest in the previous section, which I shouldn't have done. So I will do it again properly in this one. We're now going to hear all about the knowledge imperative and transforming citizen service experiences. We're delighted to say we have a keynote speaker for this session, and he is Stephen Kennedy, who's the Director of Solutions at eGain. Now, a little bit about Stephen. He started his career with Sterling Software, where he managed the Northern European Support Centre. He then moved into a pre-sales role. And for the last 20 years, Stephen has been involved in the implementation of successful customer service environments, ensuring that customers get the expected results. So to tell us a little bit more about the knowledge imperative, would you please give a very warm welcome to Stephen Kennedy?
Samina, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And everybody, thanks very much for taking the time to listen to what we're going to talk about today. And that is all how you can use knowledge to transform citizen service experiences and how it ties in with what you've been listening to, a lot of the discussions that you've had today around that whole learning capability and what the benefits are and why we should be looking at doing it. Could I have the next slide, please, Jack? Thanks, Jack. So just a little bit about eGain. We were founded in 1997. We've got headquarters throughout Sunnyvale and offices in EMEA and APAC. Primarily what we do is customer engagement automation solutions. It's a mouthful, but what we do is we basically augment the ability for agents and customers to actually self-serve themselves and also have assisted support where needed. The whole concept being to augment agent support and allow customers or citizens to serve themselves where appropriate. Our industry focuses on government, but we've got a lot of industry focus around financial services, telco, retail, health as well. So it's not just in one vertical, it's across the whole lot. Could I have the next slide, please? So a lot of big customer names use us from an insurance perspective, retailer management, as well as government and states. We've got companies like HMRC, IRS, and Veterans Affairs. Now, we'll give you a little bit of detail about some of those a little bit later on, but just to give you an idea of who all can use our software. Next slide, please. So it's wonderful us telling you how great we are, but it's very, very nice when we have people like Gartner and Forrester putting us as number one in a lot of the industries where they're actually looking at giving advice to. So Gartner feel that we are number one in digital engagement and knowledge management engagement automation platforms. And we'll have a little bit of a discussion about that a little later on. But that whole idea of being able to provide the right information when it's needed, where it's needed, all through a single source from a knowledge perspective. Remember, the more we're able to consistently answer our citizens, it means they're going to get the right answer when they need it. Could I have the next slide, please? So what we're going to talk about today is the state of where we think the citizen service is. We're going to look at how it is imperative for the government sector to actually start using knowledge. We'll talk a little bit about best practices, and then we'll have a look at how we have actually transformed citizen services as well. So if I could have the next slide, please. Next slide. To start off, if you think about it, the trust in government has been eroded since way back in the 60s. How do we get the right information? How do we get it when we need it? How do we stop going round in a loop and all of that? And I think this is something key. We're seeing more and more in the government sectors where people are asking for a digital first approach to everything that we do. And this is actually starting to become key. Now, if you look what Forrester have discovered, they, in all their surveys that they have done, it's the government sectors that have always scored the lowest. And that is something from a customer experience we need to change. How do we make our citizens' life easier to come and get a service that they actually need more and more through the environments? And with that digital first strategy, it means they don't have to necessarily go into an office. They don't have to wait on a telephone to speak to somebody, but they could potentially self-serve where appropriate. Could I have the next slide, please? So if you look at the problem, all right, and you look at our workforce, and I know you've been talking a lot about learning and development over the course of this morning, a third of our workforce is probably going to be eligible to retire in the next 5 years. Now, that's a lot of mind that you're actually going to lose. The knowledge that sits behind those people is important for you to keep. right? 57% of consumers say they get different answers across touch points, irrespective of the question they're asking. And I think this is quite key. You know, whenever you talk to an agent, whenever you look at knowledge, it is sometimes difficult to find a cohesive answer that's always consistent. And it is very important that to improve that customer experience by delivering the right answer all the time with the right information is going to be key. Gartner have done a number of surveys as well with regard to the fact that contact center agents, people who are actually serving our citizens on questions and on information, don't particularly like their tool. So you can imagine a contact center agent or somebody coming into the organization looking for a way to actually deliver the right answer for a customer or for a citizen. They struggle because if they don't like the tools that they're using, it makes it difficult. Having disparate systems, having disparate locations to try and do things is equally important. So if you look at the platform that our customer or our citizen service reps are using, you've got to have a cohesive environment. Look in one place, find the right information as quickly as we can. And this is how we're going to future proof that whole capability. But it's got to be intelligent. It's got to be a system that helps our people learn, our employees learn and understand what's going on. Could I have the next slide, please? So, why is knowledge important for governments? If we look at just two aspects, okay, the fact is that we need to be able to rapidly create and retrieve relevant content. And this is what's going to improve that overall customer experience. Now, historically, it's always been a battle. Where do I go? Who do I speak to? Where do I find that information? But by using knowledge in a knowledge management system, you're able to do this very, very effectively. And the fact that you can retrieve that data very easily from a number of different channels is key. Remember that whole concept of making sure it's digital first as much as you can. Gartner are also telling us more and more that knowledge management is the number one technology that can elevate the citizen, the agent, and the business experience all the time. And I think this is key. Up until a little while ago, pre-pandemic, knowledge always used to take a backseat because we always used to have people in all the offices locally. Everybody was able to help everybody else. But with that having been destroyed by the COVID environment, and then coming out the other side where we're starting to see people looking at a hybrid solution, having knowledge is going to be a key factor in elevating our customer and our agent's experience. And we're seeing more and more that customer experience is directly affected by an agent experience as well. And we'll have a look in a couple of seconds as to how we can actually change that and start to make a difference from that perspective. Next slide, please. So it is, in actual fact, a win-win strategy that we're actually putting into place. From a citizen's perspective, you're going to start to give them easy, fast access to answers. And I think that's key. It doesn't matter whether I'm doing this at 2 o'clock in the morning because I can't sleep. When's my rubbish being delivered or collected? I can actually go online and find that answer. I don't have to wait for tomorrow to call somebody, right? Not only that, but it doesn't matter whether I'm using my mobile phone. It doesn't matter whether I'm using a WhatsApp channel, or it doesn't matter whether I'm using a telephone. I'm able to get a consistent answer across every single touch point. I know that quite often we use a concept called create and use once, and that's truly what it is. The implication is knowledge everywhere, one source of knowledge, giving to everybody so that they can find the right answer when they need it. Now, naturally, from an agency's perspective, you're then looking at better operating performance. If people are able to find the right answer quickly and effectively, they're able to deal with more citizens. Being able to deal with more citizens in an accurate manner means that the agent is going to feel more comfortable, and it means the citizen is going to go away a lot happier than what they have been up until now, potentially. Naturally, you'll get an improved first call resolution rate, and you'll be able to reduce your repeat contracts because you've suddenly being able to deliver the right answer first time. Not only that, you can also start to right channel. There are some things that people ask that you may want to push them down the line of potentially getting this via self-service versus something that's more intricate that needs a little bit more attention could actually then be pushed through a specific channel to ensure that speed of answer and everything else. Now, amongst all of this, you can imagine that there is going to be a cost saving. And as we're starting to tighten the belts everywhere, it's how we can actually effect that cost saving, but maintain a high citizen satisfaction rate. Plus, the underlying thing is the fact that we will then be able to improve the trust in our governments, knowing we're going to get the right answer first time and everything else. All of this then looks at being able to increase our confidence of our agents. It's going to reduce stress. And the more and more we see over the next couple of years, we're going to be seeing people focus on the agent welfare side of things. And I think by having that level of knowledge to augment, to guide, and to assist, we know it's accurate, means that the stress factor of dealing with people is actually going to be reduced. Next slide, please. So what's this all about? Let's have a look at some ideas behind that modern knowledge management environment. Next slide, please. So if you think about what it is, right, there's a big difference between content and knowledge. And I think content is all about the data, the information, the policies and the procedures that we have. That's the content that we have behind it. The know-how is how we actually take that content and make it worthwhile. And it's using conversational guidance, it's using process guidance, and it's using compliance enforcements that suddenly you take all that content that is raw data, and with the know-how, you then start to drive that into good knowledge. Knowledge is proven content that's been used successfully. Next slide, please. Now, naturally, one of the ways that you do this is using a centralized hub where you are then able to serve everywhere from a single location. Imagine if instead of having siloed information for different governmental departments or for different areas within a municipality, by bringing things together, you can ensure that you've got that one knowledge source everywhere. It doesn't matter about the channel, but also in any citizen experience, you might find that a citizen may jump channels during the questions. And I think that's key. I often ask people, what's the difference between omni-channel and multi-channel? And if you think about it, multi-channel means I'll give you any way that you can talk to us. Omni-channel allows me to enable you to jump between the channels as we progress through your particular journey. That means that you can have different portals for different things. You can have widgets by presenting knowledge right at the front when you need it. Knowledge can be embedded in a lot more locations because you have the centralized hub. It then starts to become proactive and also available on demand. Imagine being able to push information out rather than have to have somebody come up and request information from you. And then it's the whole concept of done in one. It's long lived, which means you've always got that knowledge available to you. And as people come and go through our organizations with training, it makes everything simple because you've got it in a single location. Next slide, please. So just to talk about the Knowledge Hub quickly, divided into two pieces. On the left-hand side, you've got the citizen-facing. On the right-hand side, you've got the internal-facing part of the organization. And it's important to understand that you don't have to have knowledge in your knowledge base only for one specific thing. You can have it for multiple things. It can be partitioned, it can be permissioned, which means that you can actually really start to use the principle of a hub and provide multiple tiers of information where you need it. Plus, with reporting, you can then start to understand the insights. You can pull out information. What are citizens searching for? Where do we need to be proactive in how we actually do something? From an employee perspective, you've got that learning capability. Everybody learns the same thing all the time. And the nice thing about it is it's on the job or in the process learning, which means you don't have to spend days and days trying to get people up to speed in a specific area. As policies change, those policies are automatically made available for somebody to use very, very quickly and very, very easily. Next slide, please. Now, I know I'm going to run out of time here, so I'm going to go through some of these very, very quickly. But the idea behind the eGain Knowledge Hub is it unifies and orchestrates everything that you need. It's a combination of everything, contextual content. If a customer is on a specific page, give them information to that specific page. Could I have next slide, please? So how have we done this in the past before? If we could have the next slide, just to give you some examples of what we've done before. Very large government organization has approximately 50 million taxpayers a year. And they've seen a 70% reduction or deflection in calls through virtual assistant by giving that means to have access to knowledge in a virtual environment. It means they're able to solve some of the easier type requests very, very quickly, very, very accurately with integration to back-end environments. Okay, if you look at it from the engagement from an agent perspective, there's a 92% change in how people are actually working with the system and the environment. And naturally, you then get that cost saving of a 25% reduction in handling time. I remember talking to a customer a little while ago, and they were saying to me, if we could save 15 minutes per week per employee over a year, we'd save nearly £500,000 worth of time. So think about that when you're trying to do cost saving as well. Could I have the next slide, please? Just very, very quickly, another healthcare organization. And this is quite impressive how you can actually achieve something like this. 25 million citizens served, all right? A 33% increase in Forrester's customer experience index. And that is huge, all starting with knowledge in the flow of work. And I think this is key, providing knowledge at the right time when you need it, providing that guidance with policies and instructions on how to do things is a key factor in what you need to provide to your agents to actually assist everything. Could I have the next slide, please? And if we look at it from other sides and where else we can use it, if you can have the next slide, please. The whole idea here is that, talking about some of these metrics is wonderful. If you want to actually try this, eGain do offer a risk-free knowledge management adoption, which is completely new. If I could have the next slide, please. And there are two aspects to this. One of them is the eGain value model, which we look at what you're trying to achieve, how you're trying to achieve it, and actually start to put some metrics to that process. Now, these are using your numbers. They're not our numbers. They're backed up with experience that we've had over the last 20 odd years in this particular environment, and being able to show how you can actually see what that is going to deliver for you. Naturally, that then leads on to the eGain Innovation in 30 Days, which is a risk-free option for you to actually take on board and try knowledge in your environments to see how it can benefit you and what you need to actually apply from an engagement perspective to your citizens and your agents together. Could I have the next slide, please? So I'm going to stop there for a second. If we do have some time for questions, I'd like to hand it over back to Samina.
Quick question that's coming for you. I appreciate we've got very little time, but it's from Joyce. It says, is soft data from customers just reduced to keywords or standard key questions? What about the role of deep case studies as the basis of policy development?
That's a very, very good question. And I think that, one of the biggest fundamentals to any knowledge management system is you need more than just keywords. You need that natural language capability. You need that intelligence behind what you're looking for. Policies change on a regular basis. And if you make life easy by actually having that policy in a central place where everybody uses the same one, you transcend the keywords. By the reporting factor, you're then making sure that people are able to find the right level of information that they need.
Okay, great. We are going to have to leave it there because I'm getting a told off in my ear. So, Stephen, thank you very much for all your thoughts this past half hour. It's been really fascinating to hear from you. Thank you for joining us. And thank you, audience, for your questions. We'll join you shortly for our next session.